Today, we're going to talk about something that's really powerful and honestly often hidden from view. We're exploring what it's like to grow up with a mother who has borderline personality disorder and how these children learn to survive by becoming, well, make believe versions of themselves. So take a look at this. It's a diary entry from a little girl named Rachel. On the surface, it seems so simple, right? So happy. But behind those words was a mask, a survival strategy that she didn't even know she was using. And there it is. That's the heart of it. A life of pretending that was so complete, so total, that the line between her real self and the performance just blurred. You see, this wasn't a game for her. It was a necessity. So let's dive into this world of pretending. It's a world built on this huge disconnect between what you see on the outside and what's actually being felt on the inside. And here's that disconnect in action. To everyone else, Rachel was a huge success, a brilliant scientist, totally competent, totally respected. But inside, her mother's voice was her reality, a voice that told her she was a worthless piece of trash that should just be thrown away. Think about this. This nightmare she kept having wasn't just a bad dream. It was a symbol of the terror she was living with. And when she told her mother just insisted the wolf wasn't there. She was left all alone with a threat that felt so real. That's what it's like to have your reality denied over and over again. So what is it that drives this kind of chaotic environment? Well, it often comes down to one core defense mechanism. And it's a mechanism called splitting. The best way to think about it is like a light switch that doesn't have a dimmer. It's only on or off. There's no in between. In this mindset, people are either all good or all bad, and they can flip from one extreme to the other in a heartbeat. Now, this splitting has a direct and really devastating impact on the children. The mother projects her own feelings, you see. She might cast one child as the good fairy, making them the container for everything she sees as positive. But then she'll cast another as the threatening witch, forcing that child to carry all of the qualities she hates in herself. So, to cope with this emotional whiplash, children have to adapt. They don't even know they're doing it, but they find a way to survive. And they usually do it by adopting one of three main roles: the all-good child, the no-good child, or the lost child. First, let's look at the child who gets idealized. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's the lucky one, right? But the reality is actually incredibly painful. I mean, Joanna's words are just heartbreaking. As the all-good child, she didn't feel good at all. She felt scared. All that praise she got felt totally undeserved, and it created this deep sense of guilt as she had to stand by and watch her sister suffer. The all-good child basically becomes a parent to their own parent. They're trained from a young age to be an emotional rescuer. And yeah, this can lead to a lot of success on the outside, but internally, they feel like a total fraud. They're plagued by imposter syndrome and this just crushing survivor's guilt. And just look at the messages they absorb. You are responsible for my life. Can you imagine that burden on a kid? They're taught day in and day out that their parents' happiness rests entirely on their tiny shoulders. It's an absolutely impossible position to be in. Okay, so now let's look at the other side of that coin, the child who becomes the scapegoat. This quote from Katrina is just visceral, isn't it? You can feel the self-hatred, the desperate need to escape feeling coded in something awful. It's the voice of someone who has been forced to completely internalize the idea that they are the bad one. This child's entire identity gets built on a foundation of worthlessness. They're at a really high risk of developing BPD themselves, and sometimes they even develop an indifference to pain, just as a way to survive. They feel doomed, and so their behavior often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The messages here are just a brutal contrast to the all-good child's. They are messages of pure rejection, of blame, of utter contempt. They create a core belief that their very existence is a problem, a stain on the family. But there's a third role. A third path to survival. And that's the child who survives by becoming completely invisible. Mary's description of her brother Bob is such a tragic testament to this role. You see, lost children learn that safety lies in not being seen. But that invisibility comes at a terrible price. The feeling that your own life just isn't worth fighting for. These children become masters of detachment. They learn to just float through life, avoiding connection because connection feels dangerous.
On the outside, they might seem like a carefree Peter Pan, but underneath, there's this profound emptiness and a real struggle to find any kind of meaning. So, after a childhood spent trapped in one of these roles, is healing even possible? The answer, thankfully, is a resounding yes. Here's the thing. So many of these foundational wounds are pre-verbal. They get stored as wordless blueprints, and you can't heal what you can't name. So the first step is always about finding the words to give meaning to these confusing, chaotic experiences. And I just love this quote from psychiatrist James F. Masterson because it captures the path forward so perfectly. At first, therapy is a life preserver. It's about rescue, it's about survival. But eventually, it becomes a beacon, a guiding light to help someone find their way back to their true, authentic self. Because at the end of the day, recognizing these roles isn't about placing blame. It's about understanding. It's about taking that wordless blueprint from the past and using that knowledge to build a new, authentic future. That understanding, that's the key.